Hello, noble ones. Welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. A few days ago, in fact, specifically 3 days ago, we made this video called Did They Just Criminalize the Bible? Where we discussed Bill C9 that has passed in Canada through the Canadian government that basically made quoting certain passages that are deemed to be hateful from the Bible illegal. It was insane. But then I started looking more deeply into it. And it seems like that indeed Christianity in Canada has been under attack for years, and it continues to be. Now, when I say this is because if you think about it, I'm not denying that there are some people that they say they're Christians, but then they're toxic, they're hateful. I know, I can't stand those. They make our religion look bad, so to me, they are a net negative. With that being said, making a law that takes some passages that are considered unsavory from the modern perspective and make it illegal to quote them is insane because it punishes all Christians, hateful, normal, good people, loving, caring, it doesn't matter. It punishes all on the basis of our current ideas think that these passages are not good, which is crazy because if you think about how things have changed in the last decade alone, well, then how long until other passages that right now are considered fine will also be included into hate speech? I mean, it's such a blob of a nonsensical definition that governments can literally enter anything into it. And at the end of the day, they can just end up saying the entire Bible now, well, now Christianity, now the cross, now the buildings, everything. It can go into that direction, and it's really, really frustrating and scary for Canadian Christians. But then the other thing that obviously one is going to ask is, but why just Christians? Because, I mean, Jews also use the same Bible, and in fact, it's the Old Testament that's usually the basis of the quarrel, which is the one scripture that we have in common. What about the Quran? No mention, nothing. And the Quran has got verses that absolutely would be on pair, and in fact, some are worse than the stuff that you find in the Old Testament and in general Christian scripture canon. Not a word. Which made me think this sounds targeted. So, if you do a little Google search, one of the first questions we find is what happened to Christianity in Canada? And if we open it, we read two surveys in 2023, one by the International Social Survey Program, ISSP, and the other by the Non-Religion is in a Complex Future Project found Christian affiliation has slipped to 44%, down from 53% in the 2021 Statistics Canada census. This is just 2023. We'll have to double check if there is a more recent survey, but already we see that Christianity is in decline, while at the same time Islam is on the rise. This is one of the reasons is, of course, the immigration policies, the long-standing promotion of multiculturalism, which is confusing because on one hand, these kind of legislations sound like a more hidden, if you will, way of trying to create the godless state that communism has done during the USSR, but at a more subtle and, if you will, insidious way. But then at the same time, they have no problems with other religions. I wonder what the Sikh religion, how that one is welcomed in Canada. That wouldn't surprise me. Then I looked into another thing. I found a report by CBC News in 2024, that's only 2 years ago, which identified 24 instances of arson at Christian churches in Canada, which occurred between May 2021 and December 2023. And this is not even including those cases that are under investigation. So, the Bible starting to become a problem to quote you, you're going to get imprisoned. In a country where if you misgender someone, you'll end up in jail. Christian numbers are dwindling, and at the same time, we have continuous attacks, and these are real, where Christian churches have been systematically burnt. But remember, Bill C9, as we are told, is passed in Parliament with the nomenclature, open quotes, Combating Hate Act, while it's Christian churches that have been burnt to a crisp in Canada. And the arson ones are, of course, put into one category, but there is all sorts of incidents that I wasn't even aware of, and this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to vandalism. There are numerous reports of Christian churches being vandalized, being the target of vandalism, broken windows, and all sorts of forms of property damage, all of which have escalated in 2021. CBC reports Poilievre claims Christians may be the number one victims of hate-based violence in Canada. Now, when it comes again to the burning of the churches, CBC News reports that once again, between 2021 and 2023, there were at least 33 incidents. 14 of those fires took place on First Nation reserves and 13 were in small rural towns. And also the Catholic Civic Rights League, which maintains a church attack database, has documented dozens of suspicious incidents in recent years. This in combination with possible extortions, it's insane. I wasn't even aware of all of this. This is, of course, I'm going to put a link to this, which is the Catholic Civil Rights League data center or database. Look, currently, there are 153 individual entries covering attacks from 2010 to 2021 in any given year. Acts of vandalism and desecration increased during Christmas and Easter, but by far, 2021 has featured the highest number of total attacks, far more than in any other year. And yet, Canada is not looking into this, doesn't care about the hate crime. The authorities don't give a fuck. The only thing they care about is what can we do to make sure the Christians know that if they quote the wrong scripture, they're gonna end up in jail. The surge in attacks against churches this summer follows reports of discoveries of communal graveyards on properties of former residential schools. There have been no indication that these attacks have been carried out by Indigenous people, and Indigenous leaders were quite quick to condemn these acts of violence. Great. So who did it then? Indeed, there were churches burnt down on Indigenous land and those serving Indigenous Catholic communities. The CCRL noted how many non-Indigenous Canadians were quick to accuse the church of G-word, but were much slower to acknowledge that many of these graveyards were known and in many cases were the subject of compensation for upkeep and maintenance from local dioceses. This is absolutely insane. And of course, if you're a Christian living in Canada, my heart goes to you. I hope that you can start seeing some justice here. I think one of the reasons why I find these type of double standards to be so frustrating is because at the end of the day, in theory, our modern society, together with constitutional frameworks, should give us freedom of conscience, religion, thought, belief, opinion, and expression. And in fact, every individual being in theory equal under the law, go tell that to the UK, and each individual has the right to equal protection and benefit of the law, particularly when it comes to, in this case, discrimination due to religion. But the reality is that if we look at, for example, the UK, once again, a British native Anglo-Saxon ancestry Christian is not allowed to carry anything, but if you're a Sikh, you can carry a dagger because it's their religion. And even after they use that, as you would have imagined, for murder, Starmer, peace may never be upon him, doubled down and said, we're not going to remove the religious exception. They can still carry the swords, even though one was used to take the life of a local British person who couldn't defend themselves because they can't even, the local population, native of the land, can't even carry a pepper spray for self-defense. And we see that in a country like Canada, so tolerant, so liberal, it's the same thing. It's never about equality. Not once has it ever been about equality when it comes to these type of government practices. I really hope that they get things in check. I personally think that every individual is equal under the law. I think that every person should be able to live their lives without fear and to be able to express themselves, to have their religion or lack thereof, to choose whatever the heck they want to do in their lives without having to be scared of hate mobs. But this should apply to everyone, because the moment we start to saying, no, it doesn't actually count if it's against this group of individuals, that's when we become an unjust society. And in fact, I think we should stop calling it the justice system. It's just a legal system. I just hope that in a way it can get a little bit closer to what justice is supposed to be. If you appreciate my content so far and wish to help ensure my ability to continue to tell it how it is, regardless of any possible backlash, please support this channel on Patreon. Any support helps me and my team of academics keep the channel strong and gives us the means to fight back against the political rewriting of history. Stand with us, form the wall, defend the truth.